When Ibrahim Traoré speaks, the world listens. His words don't just echo across the borders of Burkina Faso, they vibrate through the hearts of millions across Africa. And this time, his response to Namibia's president wasn't just another diplomatic statement. It was a message filled with honesty, fire, and an unmistakable truth that shook the very foundation of how Africa sees itself today. Traoré, often seen as the young symbol of Africa's awakening, didn't sugarcoat his message. He spoke like a brother, not a politician. His tone carried both humility and defiance. Humility toward Africa's shared struggle and defiance against the systems that continue to divide the continent. When he spoke about unity, he didn't do it for applause. He did it because he believes Africa's future depends on leaders who aren't afraid to speak truth to power. The Namibian president had earlier made comments about Africa's direction and its position in the global order. Many leaders would have responded with carefully polished words written by advisors, but not Traoré. His reply came straight from the heart, raw and unfiltered. He reminded everyone that Africa doesn't need approval from the West or validation from old colonial powers. What it needs is solidarity, courage, and an unshakable belief that the continent's destiny must be written by its own people. What made this moment so powerful wasn't just the content of his message, but the way he said it. His eyes, his expressions, his pauses, every second spoke louder than any official statement could. He wasn't trying to dominate the conversation. He was trying to wake it up. Across social media, people from Ghana to Kenya, from Nigeria to South Africa, shared clips of his words, calling him the voice Africa has been waiting for. Some said it felt like listening to Thomas Sankara again. That same energy, that same refusal to bow down, that same love for the continent. In a world where many leaders play it safe, Ibrahim Traoré has chosen the harder road, to speak his truth even if it shakes those in power. His message to Namibia'S president was a reminder that unity isn't built through empty meetings or paper agreements. It's built through honesty, respect, and a shared purpose. He said Africa must stop acting like a collection of small nations and start thinking like one force, a continent with unmatched potential, rich in resources, rich in people, and rich in spirit. For too long, he argued, Africa has been told what to do, how to think, and who to trust. But that era is ending. His words painted a picture of a continent standing up, no longer asking for permission, but taking control of its narrative. And maybe that's why his message hit so deep. It wasn't about politics. It was about pride. It was about reclaiming dignity. It was about reminding Africa that it doesn't need to beg for partnerships when it has everything it needs within its borders. Traoré's reply wasn't aggressive, but it was firm. It carried a kind of energy that demanded respect. He talked about building bridges, not walls, but also about drawing lines where Africa's sovereignty must never be crossed. He made it clear that leadership isn't about shaking hands with powerful nations. It's about holding hands with your people. As his message spread, millions began to reflect on what kind of Africa they wanted to see. One united under leaders who speak from the heart, or one divided by interests and influence. People began posting quotes, making art, writing songs, all inspired by this one moment. It became more than a political statement. It became a movement of feeling, of pride, of hope. In small villages and big cities, the youth, those who have long felt forgotten, found a new sense of belonging in his words. Traoré spoke directly to them, without filters, telling them that Africa's greatness isn't something to be dreamed of, it's something to be built. He reminded them that the future of the continent wasn't to be decided in foreign offices or fancy summits, but in classrooms, on farms, in small businesses, and in the hearts of ordinary Africans who choose to believe again. He spoke of unity not as a slogan, but as a responsibility. Because unity without action, he said, is just noise. And that's why his message to Namibia's president mattered. It wasn't about disagreement. It was about pushing for real conversations, the kind that make leaders uncomfortable but move nations forward. It was about demanding that Africa stop pretending to be powerless when it has more natural wealth, more youth, and more resilience than any continent on Earth. He spoke with emotion when he said that no African child should go hungry in a land so fertile, no mother should suffer without care in nations so resourceful, and no country should stay poor while its soil feeds the rest of the world. He didn't say these words to shame anyone, but to awaken everyone. In his eyes, Africa's story is still being written, and every leader, every citizen, every voice has a role to play. Maybe that's why his message felt so personal, because it was not just directed at Namibia'S president. It was for every leader who has forgotten what leadership means. It was for every young African who has started to lose hope. And it was for every outsider who still underestimates the power of this continent. As the world listened, many realized that Traoré isn't just the leader of Burkina Faso. He's becoming a symbol of courage, of integrity, of the Africa that refuses to be silenced. His reply wasn't just political communication, it was emotional truth wrapped in the voice of a man who carries the weight of millions who dream of change. It was the sound of Africa breathing again. One voice, one purpose, one heartbeat. When Ibrahim Traoré spoke, something inside Africa seemed to wake up. His words weren't just speeches. They were sparks, lighting a fire that many thought had died long ago. He reminded everyone that Africa doesn't need to keep looking outward for strength. It already has everything it needs within its own soil, its people, and its spirit. His message wasn't about pride for the sake of pride, but about remembering who we are and where we come from. He called for unity, not as a slogan, but as a lifeline, a way to break free from the invisible chains that have held the continent back for decades. When he spoke about self-reliance, it didn't sound like a political statement. It felt like a personal plea, like a brother asking his family to stand together again. He talked about believing in African hands, African ideas, and African dreams. His voice carried the weight of every farmer, every student, every worker who wants to see the continent rise on its own feet. Across the continent, his words rekindled hope, making people believe that unity isn't a fantasy. It's the path forward, and it begins with self-trust. Ibrahim Traoré's response carried a raw honesty that's rare in modern politics. He didn't hide behind polished phrases or scripted diplomacy. Instead, he spoke the kind of truth that comes straight from conviction. You could feel the emotion behind his words. A deep sense of pride not just for Burkina Faso, but for the entire African continent. He reminded everyone that sovereignty isn't something to be negotiated or politely requested. It's something to be lived, protected, and honored. His tone wasn't hostile, but it was firm, filled with the quiet confidence of a man who knows where he stands. When he spoke about truth, it wasn't about proving anyone wrong. It was about bringing clarity to a continent that has been misled for too long. Pride, for him, wasn't arrogance. It was dignity, the kind that comes from knowing your roots and refusing to bow to pressure. He showed the world that true leadership isn't about pleasing others. It is about standing tall for what is right. His words reminded Africans everywhere that diplomacy without integrity is hollow, and that real progress begins when a nation dares to speak its truth, no matter who's listening. If you believe Africa deserves leaders who speak the truth and stand with pride, then don't just watch. Be part of the movement. Hit that subscribe button, drop a like to show your support, and share your thoughts in the comments below. Every voice matters, and yours could inspire the change our continent needs. Thank you for watching, and let's keep this conversation going.